Now, with Classy Neurotic's opening statement, thanks for being with us. Classy, the floor is all yours.
All right, if you can see my screen here. My name is Classy, and I am going to be arguing that trans women are women. So let's get some definitions out of the way.
I just want to make sure
Transgender,
your name is Classy. Classy.
classy, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitions. Transgender is an umbrella term for persons whose gender identity, gender expression, behavior does not conform to that is typically associated with the sex to which they were assigned at birth. Gender identity is the internal sense of gender. Gender expression is how a person shows their gender identity to others through behavior, clothing, hairstyles, voice, or body characteristics. Sex is biological status as male or female and can be attributed to chromosomes, hormones, or the external or internal anatomy. Gender are the socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that the society considers appropriate for men, women, etc., and then intersects the atypical sexual development. So I want to make this point clear. Definitions are very important, especially when we want to get to the technical know-how. But I want to make the point that the way we use language, oftentimes the concept of a word is more important than the actual dictionary definitions. Audience, can you tell me what is the definition of a camera? Here, I'll give it to you. It's fine. You don't have to know the definition of a camera. Okay, this is the definition of a camera. But you understand the concept of what a camera is because you know the function of a camera. And we're going to find this is the same situation with women, trans women. So, this is a camera, this is a camera, this is also a camera. Cameras come in all different shapes and sizes and all different types of technologies, but you know what a camera is. You can ask a 3-year-old, what is a camera? They won't give you a dictionary definition, but they'll give you a definition that fits the function of a camera. So, what is a woman? If you look at the dictionary definition, it's going to say something like adult, human, female. And that is not wrong. However, what we're going to find that in society, ultimately, what a woman is a social expectations and social norms of what we expect adult human females to do. And what we find is that transgender women are women because they can fulfill the role, expectations, and norm of what is expected of an adult human female. They may not do it 100% of the time, but neither do cisgendered women. This is a woman, this is a woman, this is also a woman. Just by looking at them, you already know what a woman is, and they fulfill the function regardless of whatever their biological basis is. So, to quote Natalie Wynn, it is not I who misunderstands biology, it is you who misunderstands language. Expect Andrew Wilson to use all sorts of inflammatory languages and phrases like, oh, it's just a bunch of gay dudes who like to dress up like women because it gets them off and they usually suffer from idle gynephilia. This is a hypothesis popularized by the researcher known as Ray Blanchard. However, this has been refuted multiple times. Once a researcher known as Charles Moser used Blanchard's method to cisgender women because, to my knowledge, Blanchard never uses with cisgender women, only with transgender women. And we actually found out that 93% of cisgender women have idle gynephilia using Blanchard's method. And then a German group also tried to use the same method to prove Blanchard right, but they couldn't find any conclusive evidence. Expect Josh Cedar to say something like, male pattern violence don't change just because you're trans, and these men are now being put in prisons with women who have committed non-violent offenses and sexual acts. I can't say the full quote, but essentially what he's trying to say is that the male pattern of violence doesn't change just because you're transgender. But what we find through the research is that the opposite is true. In fact, that transgender women are more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators. And you might ask, why should we care about transgender women? Well, you see, like many groups in the United States, transgender women are in fact discriminated against in things such as housing, employment, and education. And these things often are going to have huge implications for their health. What does the science say? The science says that gender affirming care works and that the detransition rate is very low, less than 1%. In fact, that more people regret having back surgery than their gender affirming care. So, in conclusion, transgender women are women because they can fulfill the social role of what is expected of an adult human female, even if it's not 100% of the time, but neither do cisgender women. And you should look at what the research says, what the science says, and not listen to failed reality TV stars like Josh Cedar. Thank you.
Thank you. The prompt I'm here to claim in the affirmative is trans women are women. This claim is not something I can prove to you affirmatively. It's a semantic claim that really comes down to how one defines women. I cannot teach you anything about the world if you're convinced you have all the answers. When it comes to trans medical care, I can state that there is a general consensus on treatment while also acknowledging that much of the studies are low quality and that detransitioners exist. If you come into this debate with the position that trans women are not women because a person cannot change their sex or gender, I probably cannot debate you out of your predisposition. Instead, I'll frame this argument in a more humanely authentic way that rids itself of the semantic baggage. This debate is about freedom versus control. This debate is about privacy versus invasion. Trans people exist, and their existence is a difficult one. Trans people are a small but significant part of our society. They face disproportionately high rates of suicide, abuse, homelessness, and discrimination. These challenges are not inherent in being transgender, but are a consequence of a societal rejection and a lack of support. Evidence shows that trans-affirming care reduces these harms, particularly in trans youth. Despite this, there is a concerted and organized effort to deny trans people access to this type of healthcare. Numerous medical organizations, such as the American Academy of Pediatrics, support gender-affirming care as evidence-based and life-saving. Trans-affirming care has shown to reduce suicidality by significant margins in trans youth. Denial of such care does not make trans people go away. It just exacerbates their troubles, and it leads to worse outcomes for all of us. This debate is also about parental rights. I have a right as a parent to see that my child gets the health care they need to live a full life. It is not the place of other people to tell my child or to determine on mine and my child's behalf what their health care is. How my trans child is treated is between my child, their doctor, and myself. Now, you might disagree that trans people exist. You might disagree with trans-affirming medical care. You might have valid concerns about a whole litany of problems as it relates to trans people, and that's totally fine. The issue is when you intrude into my family to tell me how to raise my kid. One side of this debate is about freedom, the freedom to pursue the healthcare needs of your child, the freedom to live a life of dignity and respect without surrendering to genital inspections to enter a bathroom, the freedom to act and be the person you want to be without the government standing in the way. And the other side of this debate is about control. Controlling how masculine or feminine boys and girls are by legal mandate. Controlling what kinds of books about gay or trans people my child can read in school. Your kid doesn't have to check out the book. Controlling which bathroom they can use. This debate has been poisoned by fear-mongering people who themselves do not have trans children. Are trans women women? That depends entirely on how you define women. If you're definitionally locked onto some definition which excludes trans people, then the answer is no. If you're open to acknowledging that we live in an ever-changing world and our definitions for words change all the time as we get new information to continue to develop, then yes, trans women are women. If you say that a woman is defined by her biology, I ask you, what about her biology? If you say she's defined by the presence of XX chromosomes, then I will point to medical conditions such as Turner syndrome, in which people you would recognize as a woman are born without the requisite chromosome. If you say a woman is defined by the presence of a vagina, I point to people who you would recognize as women who are born with vaginal agenesis, in which a vagina does not develop. There are women with Swyer syndrome who have female reproductive organs but XY chromosomes. There are women who develop without ovaries. There are women who develop without a uterus. There are women who develop without a vagina. There are women with XY chromosomes. There's women with single X chromosomes. If these people are not women, then I ask you what they are and why. All of these variations in human development tell us that sex is varied and diverse and that it's not a simple 50-50 split. Gender is a spectrum. If you definitionally lock women out based on which body parts they have or they do not have, you're making a political decision in order to exclude people from a category based on nothing more than prejudice. And that therein is the crux of our political issue. This is at heart a semantic debate which dodges a more substantive issue. How do we live with trans people? Suppose you feel trans women aren't women. You are entitled to your opinion. What you are not entitled to is intruding into my household and telling my family what they can and cannot do with their body because you are obsessed with them having the right set of genitals. As I said at the top of this, I cannot convince you if you are not open to being convinced. Instead, I ask you to imagine your child comes to you one day and tells you that they are trans. You really want the government telling you on your behalf how to navigate that problem? All right, thank you. That's my opening.
Thank you. Well, classy neurotic misgendered me a number of times. I identify as a woman. I go by Jay, and classy neurotic referred to me as he, him multiple times. And I just want to, make sure we're all clear that we're not going to be transphobic or bigoted during this conversation. We're all going to remain respectful. So I just simply demand that everybody call me she, her this entire time and refer to me as Jay. And that's all I'm going to ask. I think it's a very small request. I just want to make it clear as a self-identified trans woman myself that's following the guidelines to a T, no pun intended. We're all just men in costume dressing up that are mentally ill, and we think that we're women, but we're not. Just like the anorexic man at 80 pounds thinks he's fat, he's not really fat. And giving him liposuction and giving him diet pills isn't helping him. You're actually harming him by giving him that affirming care that affirms his delusions. We're all just cosplaying and LARPing as women. 4 to 13% of us never get bottom surgery, which means 87 to 95% of us are walking around with penises and balls between our legs. Most of us are all going to have to get prostate exams. We'll still get testicular cancer. We'll still get penile cancer. Why is that? It's because we're men still, and we're just LARPing as women. Now, everyone here knows that. They're just suspending reality and choosing to live in a science fiction world where they think men can self-identify as women. But the real victims of this are women. Real women have a right to be in reserved female spaces without trans-identified men. And they fought long and hard for that right. And I think it's kind of peak idiocracy that we're here with men trying to mansplain to women what it is to be a woman. I think that's really insulting. I think it's really offensive that these two men here are trying to explain what it is to be a woman to millions of women. Now, they know they're wrong. They know they're being disingenuous. They know their arguments are specious, but they're still going to stick to them because they're in a cult. And they want us to capitulate at the altar of the trans cult, but we're not going to do that. And as a trans-identified person myself, I'm letting you know, and you need to respect this, that we're just men in makeup. And I want to welcome you to the clown show. We're all just cosplaying. We're all just clowns. And anyone who thinks we're really women is a clown too. So I hope I can hold up a mirror so that you can self-reflect and see that when this all comes off, I'm still just a man at the end of the day. And every other trans-identified man is just a man at the end of the day. Now, you point to a lot of medical anomalies or medical outliers and say, well, there's women who don't have this. There's women who have this. There's women who can't give birth. Ipso facto, trans-identified men are women. Now, that's what we call in logic a non sequitur. It just doesn't follow. Just because there are medical conditions that make women different than other women doesn't ipso facto mean that trans-identified men are women. Now, most sentient thinking people understand this very basic concept, but you seem to get confused by it and think because a woman is born with a disorder that your friend Johnny can self-identify as a woman and magically becomes a woman. Now, since you seem very confused on how this works, I just want to lay it out for you as a trans-identified man myself, that you can't utter a phrase as a man and have a transformative power imbued to you that magically makes you a woman. There are men and there are women. Now, what we have are a lot of mentally ill men. There's a lot of men, again, with anorexia that think they're fat at 80 pounds. There's a lot of schizophrenic men that think the CIA is tailing them and hiding cameras in their toilet. There's a lot of men that have psychosis that think they're floating outside their body. None of these beliefs are true. They're the natural corollary of a mental illness. And they need to be disabused of these erroneous beliefs. They don't need these erroneous beliefs affirmed. Affirming mentally ill and erroneous beliefs is not kindness. It's not compassion. You are just further confusing someone who's mentally ill. Now, we don't affirm mentally ill delusions with any category or any group of people other than people who have gender dysphoria. That's where the exception has been made, where we don't disabuse them of their erroneous beliefs, but we tell them, yes, actually, you are a man. You were born in the wrong body. And then we argue that they should be allowed to mutilate themselves, or that children should be mutilated so that their fallacious and erroneous beliefs can be affirmed and brought to fruition. Now, again, I think most sentient people think that's stupid. Most sentient, reasonable adults don't agree with that. The trans movement knows this. That's why they're going after kids. That's why they're going for children's curriculum, YouTube Kids, Disney Plus. They're going after Drag Story Hour with kids because they know most logical, sensible, rational adults are going to reject the absurd proposition that men with a mental illness magically become women. So they have to indoctrinate the children. Again, as a trans-identified man myself, I really just want you all to know it's just a mental illness. We're just cosplaying. We're just dressing up and LARPing as something we're not. But we all know the difference between women and trans-identified men. Now, I want you to take my opponent's side if you think I should have full access to a women's bathroom. I want you to take my opponent's side if you think I should have full access to a woman's sport. I think you should take my opponent's side if you think I should be able to self-identify into female reserved spaces. If you think I should be able to do all those things, please, I beg you, take my opponent's side. If you think that's irrational and you think mental illness for people suffering from gender dysphoria should be treated like any other mental illness in the world, then I would urge you to consider what me and my interlocutor, Andrew Wilson, have to say. I think we're making a pretty solid point that mental illness should be taken seriously, it should be treated, and we shouldn't sacrifice women's reserved spaces at the expense of mentally ill men. We shouldn't continue male hegemony, patriarchy, and misogyny by giving men carte blanche to women's spaces.
Going
I think
over
that's
that
a very,
halftime.
I think that's a very basic, rudimentary principle, and we've observed it as a civilized society for hundreds of years, and we should continue to do so. So again, throughout this debate, just look at me and ask yourself, should Jay have full access to female reserved spaces? And should millions of other trans-identified men have full access to female reserved spaces? If the answer is yes, then take my opponent's side. If the answer is no, take me and Andrew Wilson's side. Think about it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opening. We are going to kick it to Andrew Wilson as well for this remaining several minutes of their opening. Andrew, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, so to the answer to the prompt is, are trans women women? The answer is no. Very simple, no. Yeah, we're going to get into a semantic distinction. What's really funny here, though, is like these are really old arguments that our opponents bring up, really old arguments for this position. I'm going to tear all of them apart. They have no idea. Like these are old. You're not even with the times, guys. You need to get with the times. Also, just to beat up on just a little bit, right? I guess to throw the leftists a bone here. Nicole, when conservatives do this, it's fucking cringe. You should never dress up like a woman in order to own the teas. And also, while it is a good rule to not attack ever another conservative, I'm also going to have to say this to you, which is, ultimately, in this idea that you want to mock them, right? You almost kind of give it a bit of credit, and you really shouldn't, right? You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do the Crowder. You shouldn't do any of that shit, right? You shouldn't do the Alex Stein thing. And then, just to kind of throw this last part out, I don't give a flying fuck if men go into women's sports and beat the holy shit out of them. I don't fucking care. Women voted for this shit. They overwhelmingly vote to have men come into their spaces and kick the holy shit out of them. And I just don't give a fuck about it, right? If they want to lose every one of their sporting events, they want to lose everything that the stupid ass feminist movement tried to build, I don't care. right? I don't care if they're in the UFC and they get their little brains bashed in. I don't give a shit. I don't care if they're in their little swim meets and they get their asses kicked. They go home and cry. I don't fucking care. They voted for the shit. Let them deal with it. Stop going in trying to save these fucking feminists all the time. Stop it. It's bad for us. It's bad for the entire conservative movement. Fuck them. Let them deal with it. Let these guys go to kick the holy crap out. Who cares? Right? That's my position on that. So when he says, hey, listen to what me and my opponent, or I'm sorry, my partner has to say on this, you know, if you want men and women's space, I don't give a shit. I don't care. If women are so stupid that they're actually going to allow men to put on a wig when they have a flopping dick and go in and beat the holy shit out of them in their own sports, why would I give a flying fuck? I don't care at all. I don't even, not even a little bit. In fact, nobody watches their sports anyway. Who cares? Right. And here's the thing. You never see it in the opposite way, do you? So you're not ever going to see the M to Fs come in and it just really compete. You know, the female to males, right? You're not going to ever see them come in and really compete with the men. Like, that's never going to happen. They get their asses kicked. They're not going to come out in the UFC and fight it out. They're going to get beat up, right? It's only ever going to work one way. So let them suffer. Let them suffer, bro. Like, let them deal with the consequences of the stuff that it is that they want. All right. But anyway, with that, I'll just yield the close. Let's just get into the arguments. These are all old arguments. They're all stupid arguments. We're going to destroy them quickly. Go ahead.
And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. The discussion is all yours.
Yeah, so my position is that a woman is an adult human female. Unless you can demonstrate otherwise, I don't even know how we have a debate.
Sure. Let me just ask what is a female then?
You really want to do that? You want to go down each definitional tree? I mean, we can, but can we? I just want to make sure before we go down each definitional tree that that's what you want to do. Because I just want to let you know what the conclusion of that is going to be, right?
Okay,
is that we're just going to end up with two different definitions, and you're going to say I define it differently than you, and that's going to be the end.
LSP, how do you know your mother?
Wow, you're not wrong. Yeah, I agree with that completely.
How do you know who is your mother and who is your father?
Two sides. So I guess I'm just gonna I guess to give you my definition of woman on the one I like to use here. Give me a second. A woman is an adult human with the gender identity of a woman, and woman itself is a category of people which describes both sex and gender, which is usually associated with female.
Okay, so you get to decide. So the individual gets to decide if they're a female?
No, the individual gets to decide if they're a woman.
Okay, and
which is both a social category. It's a social category.
Okay, so is it only a social category or also a biological category?
It's also a biological category.
Okay, so why should we default to the social category over the biological?
Because it's that much easier with language.
It seems like it's pretty easy. I don't think anybody's confused when they say woman, they mean female. They don't seem confused. Do you see a lot of confusion? Was there a ton of confusion? Hang on. In the comments, was there a ton of confusion? Or did you note in your life that when you were walking around and people said woman and it alluded to female, that they were confused about it? Ever?
Okay.
How do you know which one of your parents?
I have no idea what you're asking.
When you walk around in your life, okay, your whole life, the entirety of your entire life,
see women? Okay,
and somebody said the word woman to you, and they meant female because they all do. Almost everybody says woman means female.
Category associated with female.
Were you ever confused? You were never confused, ever.
Really? You've never been confused about somebody was a woman in your life?
No. What do you mean?
I guess it's just there's so many people I guess I grew up with where it's like, hey, you look kind of androgynous. You can go either way.
Oh, come on. It's so rare. It's so rare. Yeah. So can you go, can you come across a person?
Transgender people are also rare.
Can you come across can you come across a person who's like super ugly, right? And you can't tell?
Yeah, I'm sure
you can. You know what you can do? You know what you can do? You can walk over and be like, hey, are you a fucking chick or are you not a chick? And they can be like, well, no, I'm not a chick. And that's it. Done. So nobody's confused about this, bro. Who's ever been confused in the history of the world? Who's ever been confused?
Obsess over the fact that you can't define what a woman is, or you can't just use the XX chromosome. He never talks about the studies, though. He never talks about the research.
What research into what?
The fact that idogynephilia, you see idogynephilia argument. You literally use that
When?
argument in the debate. In the debate with First Amender.
Well, here's
When?
what here's,
A couple weeks ago.
I'm
stop
sorry.
it
I'm
there.
sorry. Hang
Here's
on.
what Andrew's not
Just
gonna
hang
Hold
on.
on,
It's my
gentlemen.
turn. Let me. Can I
Gentlemen.
please respond?
Gentlemen.
Yes, please.
So
I'll
so
give you a chance
classy.
to respond, Andrew. I'll give
Am
you a
I
chance to
debating?
respond.
Am I debating
But
First
hold on,
Amendment?
Andrew, give me 1 sec. I'll give you a chance to respond, Andrew. I'm not trying to cut you off, but I do want to say, classy. Then is great opportunity to go into the specific research. But Andrew, if you want to address the claim that you never address the research, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're not debating with First Amender, and I'm not debating with First Amender. Whatever you think was said in another debate, I'm here to address your arguments, and you're here to address arguments I make to you, not arguments that I may have made to somebody else in some past debate that you're obsessed about. That's not how debating works, you imbecile. Now, if you would like to
So
take
you
me,
don't think
stop,
that,
stop,
like,
bro, stop,
transgender
bro. Let
women
me
just
finish.
have
Let me finish.
autogynephilia?
Let me finish.
No, but do you think that
Let
they're
me
just
finish.
men, they're just gay
It's,
dudes
it's
pretending to
irrelevant.
dress up
Totally,
as women?
totally irrelevant.
No, but
Listen,
do you
I
think
want
just
to
answer
just
yes
one
or
sec.
no?
I do
Is
want
that
to hold on
actual
1 sec. I do want to
hypothesis
give
that
Andrew
you
a chance to
actually
finish, and
believe in?
I'm going to give Andrew a chance to finish. So Andrew, maybe 30 seconds, and then I promise, classy neurotic.
yeah,
will give
here,
you
I'll
the
just
next
make
minute.
it super easy. Well, I don't know if you know how to read, but we have a debate prompt. The debate prompt is, are trans women women? Not, do trans women have autogynephilia, or do women have autogynephilia? Is that anywhere in the debate prompt? The answer is no. I don't know why you brought it up. Clearly you don't know how to debate. Maybe you just didn't prep for the prompt. I don't know. Or maybe you're trying to do a red herring, or you're trying to get me and my debate partner to go down all sorts of illusory paths that have nothing at all to do with the debate prompt. Can you address the debate prompt now?
I already did in my intro. But
All
here's
right,
the
I'd
funny
like
thing,
to-
All right,
you're
hold on
avoiding
1
this
sec.
because you
I'd like
know
to
you can't
address it.
defend it. You know the research doesn't defend, that doesn't support your position. So of course you're gonna run away from this topic though. It's how
I'll give you a
convenient,
chance
Andrew.
to.
I'd like to
I'll give
address
you a chance
it.
to go into the research, classy. Josh, I hate to, but just since the research came up, in terms of specific research that Andrew, you feel like he hasn't addressed, you think he hasn't addressed, or you want to give you a chance to dig into that specific research, and then Josh will give you a chance to respond to after.
Right.
Classy neurotic.
So the idea that like trans women are just men, like they're just like, you know, getting aroused by the idea of like dressing up as women just hasn't actually been proven. This was an idea like first popularized by the psychologist known as Ray Blanchard. A lot of trans folks like him because, you know, he kind of just like, they just kind of like use his arguments, but then he's actually been disproven many times. So there was a study that was shown it was conducted by Charles Williams that where they did a questionnaire with cisgender women, because Ray Blanchard has only done the questionnaire with transgender women. He's never done it with a proper control group like with biological.
Well, let
women.
me just quickly respond. I don't give a shit. Can we get back to the debate prompt now?
I think it's just convenient that you're running away from an argument.
Yeah, it's
wait,
convenient
wait.
that I'm here to
Stop,
debate
stop.
what the debate prompt is. I know it's very convenient.
Well, this is why it's just a bad prompt, because it's like, I think women are this, I think women are that. Like,
Well, if you want to hone in on specific arguments, I wouldn't use an autogynephilic argument to try to claim somebody is or isn't a woman. That would be silly. Even if I were to grant all of this is true, it still wouldn't hurt my position. Who gives a shit? So let's move into something that will hurt my position. That would be great.
Okay, sure. Can we address the overwhelming consensus that trans affirming healthcare tends to reduce suicidality in trans people?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Just my statement.
Okay.
Like this
which specific studies?
Thing. Let me look some up.
Yeah, because
this is why on hand. But it's like,
the reason that you probably should is because you're probably not up to date with the latest studies. So here's what you actually will find in the literature: that after gender affirming care, it is true that there is a reduction in self-harm. However, it goes right back up to 20x times. Goes back up 20x times after the initial euphoria is over. You probably didn't know that because you're not keeping up with the literature.
Why does it go back up?
Well, so there's a euphoric response. They don't exactly know why it is this euphoric response happens. However, it goes back up 20x after the affirming care is done.
Okay,
I have study after study that demonstrates.
Yeah, but why? That's like very important. Why?
Yeah,
why?
Yeah, they're not sure. They're not sure exactly why.
Okay, so then what's your point?
So do you know what?
If you're not sure, like I
because
the obvious reason that I
do you know why? Do you know why?
A lot of societal rejection. With,
yeah,
like,
you can say that,
transition.
But yeah,
like transitioning is not like a left right.
Calm
like,
down. Let's have an actual debate. Calm down.
Well, if you let me finish my point, you could have.
Yeah, but I wasn't even done with mine.
I was the one making the point.
You asked a question, actually.
Oh,
So I was
okay.
trying to answer the question. So if you say, well, wait a second, it's inconclusive, that actually makes my point. Yes, it's inconclusive, but because something is inconclusive, you would actually have to bite the same bullet that it's inconclusive. You don't know. Anything you're about to say is an assertion. It is scientifically inconclusive.
Okay, I can grant that there are some studies which show that trans-affirming care can be deleterious, and also that there's trans-affirming care that is helpful. That's not a reason to ban trans-affirming care. That's a reason to refine how we diagnose it. Add another doctor, right? Get a second opinion. Talk to a therapist, right? You have to acknowledge
You have to show me
there are evidence
you
that
would,
trans-affirming
yeah.
care.
You would have to show me conclusive data. So this would be an actual
What's your idea of conclusive data?
Stop. This would be a uniformity, a consensus-based uniformity within the scientific community, okay, that X is conclusively demonstrated to be true. This is very hard, by the way, in the social sciences, very, very rare, which is why almost everything that's said in trans debates almost always are assertions. You're going to talk about brain scans, that's inconclusive too. Almost everything that you're going to bring up is totally inconclusive. Currently, we have two different standards which we're looking at. We have the British standard. We have we essentially have the Western standard, and then we have the non-Western standard, even though these are Western nations. And I can pull these up. Where here it's okay to do the affirming care as a kid, and it's recommended. In other places, that is not the case. So this is current literature. It's inconclusive. We actually don't know. We don't even know if the affirmative care, and by the way, this was the warning conservatives gave, and it was even the warning some gay activists gave, is that you have to be very careful about saying it's conclusive, that affirmation and affirming care, right, conclusively means that there's going to be a long-term risk reduction in suicidality. We now know that is not the case. However, we don't know why that's not the case.
Okay, I am not conclusively saying that trans-affirming care is always the right decision.
Right.
I am acknowledging, if you'd let me, I am acknowledging that there are indeed two different branches of study on this that come with opposite conclusions. That's not a reason to stop or ban trans-affirming care. That's a reason to gather more data, right? Well, if we have evidence that it does help, if you stop care, you could potentially be making the problem worse. If you have care that reduces suicidality in trans youth, you have to acknowledge that if you're going to stop that care, you're going to have higher rates of trans.
But the problem is, versus hard science, where you can come to real conclusions, and soft sciences, you don't actually know that you're not just using these kids as experiments. They're like a petri dish for you. So essentially, as a petri dish, you're like, well, we'll try this and try that. We're going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. You also have, unfortunately, in the trans movement, you have a big problem with certain groups who often fund these studies, or who are often at the forefront trying to make advocations, who aren't even scientists. I mean, some of them are like fucking plastic surgeons and shit. Like they're not real scientists, or the head
Wait, a
of
plastic surgeon can't do research?
Stop. Let me finish. I don't think that you would want a plastic surgeon to be giving you medical advice about heart surgery. Okay. I don't think you would. So the thing is, like, maybe you can say that you would. I wouldn't believe you. Most rational people wouldn't. I guess you can say that you would. But ultimately, what I'm telling you is that there's multiple different standards for looking at this. None of it's conclusive. Because it's not conclusive, you're actually asking us to make our children into petri dishes. That's what you're actually requesting. You say that this is a fight over sovereignty and over control. I would actually say that you're right. If it is a control over the family, then, and you say a person should have a right to allow their child to do gender affirming care, shouldn't a person have a right to also tell them they can't?
I want to jump over to either Classy or LSP, and then we definitely have to jump over to Josh. Josh, I know you had something you wanted to say earlier in it, so I do want to make sure, though, that I get the left side first, so that we don't
okay,
team up
good.
on it.
Yes. I'm not against people saying that they can't. I'm not saying the government shouldn't be involved. I'm saying the government needs to be involved in a more precise way than outright bans, right? I'm not in favor of giving people trans-affirming medical care if they are in fact not trans. If you think that's my position, that's not my position. I don't believe this care should be given to people who don't need it. But for the people who do need it, it is shown to help them. It is shown to reduce their rates of suicidality. If you get rid of this care, their rates of suicidality will go up.
The rates of suicidality go back up anyway.
Buddy, I let you talk.
But they go back up anyway.
Babe,
I don't understand the argument.
I let you talk. The American Medical Association strongly supports access to evidence-based gender-affirming care and has taken steps to oppose political interference in medical decision-making. The AMA highlights that gender-affirming care can be life-saving, particularly for transgender youth. I'm reading their statement here, who face elevated risk from mental health challenge and suicidal ideation. Now, I can believe the American Medical Association, or I can believe that guy on the internet.
Well, I mean, first of all, citing the AMA is also saying that right now it's inconclusive, that their research is inconclusive. This is noted that it's inconclusive. Here's why. Suicide attempts post-transition in a 10-year period after are 20 times the normal suicide rate of an average person. Is 0.6%. So the thing is like they're pretty much on track with how they were pre-care. That's why it's inconclusive. Now, you look at the middle and you say, but because we don't know, we should continue, right? But that's not scientific. That is the opposite of scientific. So you can't say that because we lack evidence, we should continue until we have evidence to the contrary. That would be absurd. That would be the opposite of anything that you and I would consider the scientific method. So since that's true, and it is true, and I can give you the studies on it right this second if you'd like, you can look it up, the suicide-related outcomes following gender-affirming treatment. It's very simple. Now, we have other nations now which are saying they're adopting a standard saying when it comes to affirming care, if your kid comes to you and says, I'm trans, for instance, instead of affirming that they're trans, you can actually say, hey, look, okay, you're wearing a dress, right? Go put on boy clothes, something like this, and that the outcomes might actually be better, right? This is what happens when you have inconclusive science and you're letting, by the way, the American Medical Association, and I think even you would agree with this, is part of a political body at this point, and it's influenced by politics, and it has been influenced by politics for a long time. The idea that you're going to take these social soft sciences and then pretend that they're hard sciences is absurd. It's absurd. What you have is an affirmation bias. You want it to be true, and so you're going to, like many of the advocates do, fight tooth and nail to make sure that it is, regardless of what the actual science says, which is inconclusive. It's inconclusive. So stop telling me what we need to do as a matter of policy or not do as a matter of policy when you have inconclusive science, sir.
Okay, the American Medical Association statement wasn't that trans care is not conclusive. That was not their claim. Their claim was that care can be life-saving for transgender youth. That's their claim.
And Can's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, of course, Can's doing a lot of heavy lifting. Not all people are trans. Misdiagnoses happen. I don't know what you're arguing against. But
then show me the conclusion then.
They didn't say it was conclusive. I'm not saying it's
conclusive. Oh, you just said it was. You just said it was conclusive.
I just said the opposite, my friend.
So if it's not conclusive, then I don't care.
Stop. I can't help that you don't care.
I don't care about non-conclusive science. Why do you?
Okay, fine. You don't have to care. What I'm saying is the American Medical Association is saying one thing about this, and it's your place, guy on the internet who's not convinced to intrude into my child's healthcare opportunities. That's what I'm saying.
Do you have children?
You don't belong.
Do you have children?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I have children too. And the thing is that if it is sovereign to the idea that you are in charge of your child's healthcare decisions, if you want to go and cut off little Johnny's wing because he thinks that he's a girl, I don't fucking give a shit, right? It's just one less reproductive mentally ill dead end, right? I don't care, right? It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. However, don't try to tell me that it's scientifically informed because it's not. It's inconclusive. The science on this is totally inconclusive. And by the way, it's going to be inconclusive for a long time because it's basically a brand new phenomenon. Now, you can say, no, it's hundreds of years old. No, we only really started to dive into this phenomenon recently. We're talking, medical research on this as far as the LGBTQ groups getting involved and starting the mass funding, things like this, about 15 years, not very long. Okay. And when we were looking at longitudinal outcomes, meaning elongated outcomes over long periods of time, we are simply not there to have conclusive data on this, man. So I don't know. Just don't tell me it's a scientific consensus or a scientific conclusion, but rather you just want to cut off your kid's wiki if you want to. And it's like, I could at least accept that argument. That at least is better than the one you're giving.
Hang on. I've been writing down what you're saying. Is your argument that you do not want to ban trans healthcare? You just think it's inconclusive?
No, my argument here is that is simply this.
It's not a scientific conclusion?
That you are not utilizing something which has some scientific consensus or has a scientific conclusion to it, or that it's even the data is conclusive itself. Rather, what you're actually arguing is that you think you have a right as a parent, if you think your child wants to be a girl, that you can modify their body. That's what you're actually arguing. So why don't you just say that and stop hiding behind the science? Because this has nothing to do with science. Science is inconclusive. It's inconclusive, sir. So why don't you just tell us you want to be able to cut off your kid's fucking junk if you want to and leave it at that?
Okay, guy. Yeah, I just want to cut off my kid's junk and but
isn't that what you're arguing?
I don't know how to argue with this. Like, my child has a condition. I want my child to get a
How do
certain
you know
kind of
that they have a
healthcare.
condition?
You're like, no, I don't want to ban you from that healthcare. Just admit that you want to cut their dick off. Like, that's what you're saying.
If the
I don't know how to argue
science
against
that's actually inaccurate. I'm saying to you that you don't actually know if your child has the condition because you
No, I
can't.
don't. That's
You
why I take
can't.
them to a
You
fucking
can't.
doctor.
You can't. Yeah, but they can't scientifically and conclusively tell you that
That's why I get
condition.
a second opinion. That's why I
Stop.
go to a therapist.
Stop, bro. Let me respond. I just let you go through your
It
whole
just seems
diatribe.
obvious. Well,
I let you go
not
through your
really,
whole
but okay.
diatribe.
You actually
Okay, then
interrupted a
go
lot,
through
so
your
go
whole
for it.
diatribe, and I'll
I'm
stop,
sorry,
and then I'll
continue.
respond.
I'm being rude. I'm sorry.
You are being kind of rude, but anyway.
I apologize.
Yeah. So back to this. What I'm saying is that if you don't have any conclusive scientific data, and you don't, and none of the doctors have conclusive scientific data either, none of them do because they're all going off the same data, then any one of them who diagnoses your kid as being some other gender, right, cannot conclusively tell you that this is so. They can't do it. So usually what you're doing is a bunch of guesswork. That's what you're actually doing. And you're saying, based on the guesswork of me and whatever healthcare professional who are trained, by the way, by pharmaceutical companies. They're trained by various companies that have all sorts of lobbying groups involved with them, just so you know. And yeah, you can look it up. If you think I'm wrong, look it up right now. I'll give you the time. You're saying even though we have no conclusive scientific outcome, I want the ability to basically pump my child full of fucking hormones and give them a debilitating condition for the rest of their life, because that's exactly what it's going to do. If you take your son and you pump them full of estrogen, you're going to fuck them up, bro. And you can pretend that you're not going to fuck them up. You can pretend, no, I'm just helping them affirm whatever the soul fairy who stuffed the wrong soul into the wrong body. It was actually a female soul and he stuffed it in a male body. But what you're actually doing is you're just fucking them up. You're just really asking me for permission to fuck your kids up.
Dog, I ain't asking you permission for shit. All right. I don't answer to you. I'm not talking about having conclusive scientific data. Hang on. I let you whine. If you don't have conclusive scientific data, I'm sorry. I'm not claiming I have conclusive scientific data.
Well,
I'm claiming.
I want to give
Well,
LSP
ladies and gentlemen, he
plenty of
doesn't
time.
care. Like,
LSP, I'm talking on your behalf right now. I want to give LSP plenty of time to respond. So let's give LSP, I would say, maybe about 2 minutes to respond uninterrupted, and then we do have to get to Josh.
I
Josh,
don't know how to.
What I want you to do, Josh, is when LSP finishes in approximately 2 minutes, jump in, because I know you had a point you wanted to make earlier, and I just want to be sure that we hear it.
Do I got enough time to go grab some ice, James?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I need to have a drink while I'm destroying the rest of these degens.
You think the tough guy act gets him laid?
Oh, every night. You look divorced.
I'm sure. Namaste, my friend. Peace and love.
This is a good chance. LSP, Josh can engage with your arguments as well. If you did want to respond to what Andrew just said, you've got 2 minutes.
I don't know how to respond necessarily to I don't care. His fixation is whether or not I have conclusive scientific data, and I've already admitted I don't. Right? Science can go both ways. I'm just saying, medical organizations, which are trusted by doctors, professionals who do treat people with the condition my child might have, endorse this kind of healthcare, right? And they do it for a reason. So maybe he don't like it. I'm sorry. Don't stand in my way to do, from getting that healthcare. But then he's also like, I don't care if you do it, just to make you want to cut your kid's dick off. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if that's how you want to look at it, yeah, I just want to cut my kid's dick off. It's retarded. I don't know how to engage with. I don't care. Do people actually think these are good arguments?
Josh, I want to give you,
they pay like
Nicole, I want to give you a chance. If you want to make either your earlier point you were going to make, or if you want to respond to what LSP said.
Yeah, so just because something putatively reduces the suicide rate of someone struggling with a mental illness, it doesn't mean what they're struggling with is factual. Now, the question asked in this debate, are trans women women? Just because suicide rates might go down if they get affirming care doesn't ipso facto mean that they are women. They don't magically become women if their suicide rates go down. They don't magically become women if it curtails negative symptoms. It just means that they got some kind of care that makes them feel better about their delusions. If we gave anorexic people affirming liposuction or affirming diet pills and it reduced their desire to kill themselves, it doesn't ipso facto mean they were fat all along. There's no transformative power imbued to the sufferer of a mental illness just because they were lied to by somebody. If a schizophrenic man was lied to and his desire to kill himself decreased, it doesn't mean the CIA truly is in his bushes. It doesn't mean the FBI is stalking him. It just means somebody was disingenuous, duplicitous, and lied to him. That is what we're dealing with here. Just because putatively suicide rates might go down with trans-identified men when they are lied to or given affirming care does not mean they are women. It just means they are being lied to. Now, we don't lie to and indulge anybody else's erroneous beliefs, especially when they're mentally ill. But for some reason, we make the exception when it comes to trans-identified men and women. Now, the question that's asked in the debate is, are trans women or trans-identified men women? Well, I'll make it easier. I'll tell you what the medical guidelines and scientific literature say. They say that they're men. The guidelines say that trans women are men. Let's go to NIH, NHS, WHO, WPATH, Planned Parenthood, transequality.org, or the Department of Justice et al. If we go to any of them, they say that to be a trans woman, you simply have to articulate a gender identity, which they say is a personal identity that differs from your biological or assigned sex. Now, assigned sex is a euphemism for biological sex. It's a specious phrase. It's using verbal legerdemain. To be a trans woman, all you have to do is articulate a gender identity that differs from your biological sex. So what all the guidelines say is trans women are simply men that have articulated a gender identity of female, spoken and said, I am a female, and a prerequisite of that is they have to be men. A prerequisite of being a trans woman is you have to be a man. So the guidelines make it very clear that trans women are nothing more than trans-identified men who have articulated that they think their gender identity is female, and they make it very clear that anyone can say this, nobody can question it because it's a personal identity that only the person who has agency over it can articulate. And what that means is I am a trans woman. Now, would you guys argue that I'm a woman? Because
Great opportunity to switch it over.
I've articulated a gender identity that differs from my assigned sex at birth. So according to your argument, I am a woman. Or are you actually taking me in Andrew's position and saying that I'm just a trans-identified man? I think it's very clear all trans women are just trans-identified men, and the medical literature states that unequivocally.